Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 922nd night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the shepherd saw the semblance of the lion, he deemed it a very lion, and was affrighted with the sorest fright, trembling for dread. So he said to the thief, O my brother, take what thou wilt, I will not gainsay thee. Accordingly, the rogue took what he would of the sheep, and redoubled in greed by reason of the excess of the shepherd's fear. Accordingly, every little while he would hie to him, and terrifying him, saying, The lion hath need of this, and requireth that, and his intent is to do thus and thus, and take a sufficiency of the sheep. And he stinted not to do thus with him, till he had wasted the most part of his flock. This, O king, added the favourite, I tell thee only that thou suffer not the grandees of thy realm to be deluded by thy mildness and easiness of temper, and presume on thee, and in right rede their death were better than they deal thus with thee. Quoth the king, I accept this thy counsel, and will not hearken to their admonition, neither will I go out unto them. On the morrow the Wazirs and the officers of state and heads of the people assembled, and taking each with them his weapon, repaired to the palace of the king, so they might break in upon him, and slay him, and seat another in his stead. When they came to the door, they required the doorkeeper to open to them, but he refused, whereupon they sent to fetch fire wherewith to burn down the doors and enter. The doorkeeper, hearing what they said, went into the king in haste, and told him that the folk were gathered together at the gate, adding, They require me to open to them, but I refused, and they have sent to fetch fire, to burn down the doors withal, so that they may come into thee and slay thee. What dost thou bid me to do? Quoth the king in himself, Verily I am fallen into uttermost perdition. Then he sent for the favourite, and as soon as she came, and said to her, Indeed, Shimas never told me aught, but I found it true, and now great and small are coming proposing to slay me and thee, and because the doorkeeper would not open to them, they have sent to fetch fire, to burn the doors withal. So will the house be burnt, and we therein. What dost thou counsel me to do? She replied, No harm shall betide thee, nor let thine affair affright thee. This is a time when the simple rise against their kings. Quoth he, What dost thou counsel me to do, and how shall I act in this affair? Quoth she, My rede is that thou fillet thy head, and feign thy sickness, and send for the Wazir Shimas, who will come and see the plight wherein thou art. And do thou say to him, Verily, I propose to go forth to the folk this day, but this malady hindered me. So go out to them, and acquaint them with my condition, and tell them that tomorrow I will fare forth without fail to them, and do their need, and look into their affairs, so they may be reassured, and their rage may subside. Then do thou summon 10 of thy father's slaves, stalwart men of strength and prowess, to whom thou canst entrust thyself, hearing to thy hest, and comply with thy commandment, surely keeping thy secret in lief to thy love, and charge them on the morrow to stand at thy head, and bid them suffer none of the folk to enter, save one by one, and all who enter do thou say, Seize them, and do them die. And they agree with thee, upon this tomorrow set up thy throne in the divan, and open thy doors. When the folk see that thou hast opened to them, their minds will be set at ease, and they will come to thee with a whole heart, and seek admission to thee. Then do thou admit them one after one, even as I have said to thee, and work with them thy will. But it behoveth thee begin by slaying Shimas, their chief and leader, for he is the grand Wazir, and head of the matter. Therefore do him die first, and after put all the rest to death, one after the other, and spare none whom thou knowest to have broken with thee his covenant, and in like way slaughter all whose violence thou fearest. And thou deal thus with them, there will be left them no power to make head against thee. So shalt thou be at rest from them with full repose, and shall enjoy thy kingship in peace, and do whatso thou wilt. And know that there is no device that will profit thee more than this. Quoth the king, Verily, this thy counsel is just, and that which thou biddest me is to the point, and I will assuredly do as thou directest. So he called for a fillet, and bound his head therewith, and shamed sickness. Then he sent for the grand Wazir, and said to him, O Shimas, thou knowest that I love thee, and hearken to the counsel of thee, and thou art to me as brother and father both in one. Also thou knowest that I do all thou biddest me, and indeed thou badest me go forth to the lieges, and sit to judge between them. Now I was assured that this was right rede on thy part, and proposed to go forth to them yesterday. But this sickness assailed me, and I cannot sit up. It hath reached me that the folk are incensed at my failure to come forth to them, and are minded of their mischief to do with me that which is unmeet, and that thou know not what aileth me. So go thou forth to them, and acquaint them with my case, and the condition I am in, and excuse me to them. For I am obedient to their bidding, and will do as they desire. Wherefore order this affair, and engage thyself for me here, even as thou hast been a loyal counsellor to me, and to my sire before me. And it is of thy wont to make peace between the people. Tomorrow, inshallah, I will without fail come forth to them, and peradventure my sickness will cease from me this night, by the blessing of the purest intent, and the good I propose them in my heart. So Shimas prostrated himself to Allah, and called down blessings on the king, and kissed his hand, rejoicing at this. Then he went forth to the folk, and told them what he had heard from the king, and bade them from that which they had in mind, acquainting them with what excused the king for his absence, and informing them that he had promised to come forth to them on the morrow, and deal with them according to their desires. Whereupon they dispersed, and hied them to their houses. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 923rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Shimas went from the presence of the ringleaders of the commons, and said to them, Tomorrow the sovereign will come forth to you, and will deal with you as ye desire. So they hied them to their homes. On such wise affair it was with them. But as regards the monarch, he summoned 10 slaves of gigantic stature, men of hard heart and prow of prowess, whom he had chosen from amongst his father's bodyguards, and said to them, Ye know the favour, esteem, and high rank ye held with my sire, and all the bounties, benefits, and honours he bestowed on you, and I will advance you to yet higher dignity with me than this. Now I will tell you the reason thereof, and ye are under safeguard of Allah from me. But first I will ask you somewhat wherein, if ye do my desire, obeying me in that which I shall bid you, and conceal my secret from all men, ye shall have of me largesse and favour, surpassing expectation. But above all, obedience. The 10 thralls answered him with one mouth and in sequent words, saying, Whatso thou biddest us, O our liege, that we will do, nor will we depart in aught from thy commandment, for thou art our lord and master. Quoth the king, Allah allot you weal. Now will I tell you the reason why I have chosen you out of the increase of honour with me. You know how liberally my father dealt with the folk of his realm, and the oath he took from them on behalf of me, and how they promised him that they would not break faith with me, nor gainsay the bidding of me. And you saw how they did yesterday, whenas they gathered all together about me, and would have slain me. Now I am minded to do with them somewhat, and 'tis this, for that I have considered their action of yesterday, and see that naught will restrain them from its like, save exemplary chastisement. Wherefore I perforce charge you privily to do to death whom I shall point out to you, to the intent that I may ward off mischief and calamity from my realm by slaying their leaders and chiefs, and the manner thereof shall be on this wise. Tomorrow I will sit on this seat in this chamber, and give them admission to me one by one, coming in at one door and going at another. And do you all 10 stand before me, and be attentive to my signs. And whoso entereth singly, take him and drag him into yonder chamber, and kill him, and hide his corpse. The slaves answered, We hearken to thy haste, and obey thy order. Whereupon he gave them gifts, and dismissed them for the night. On the morrow he summoned the thralls, and bade set up the royal seat. Then he donned his kingly robes, and taking the book of law cases in his hand, posted the 10 slaves before him, and commanded to open the doors. So they opened the doors, and the herald proclaimed aloud, saying, Whoso hath authority, let him come to the king's carpet. Whereupon up came the Wazirs, and the prefects, and the chamberlains, and stood each in his rank. Then the king bade admit them one after one, and the first to enter was Shimas, according to the custom of the Grand Wazir. But no sooner had he presented himself before the king, and ere he could beware, the 10 slaves gat about him, and dragging him into the adjoining chamber, dispatched him. On this wise did they with the rest of the Wazirs and Olema and notables, slaying them one after another, till they made a clean finish. Then the king called the headsmen, and bade them ply sword upon all who remained of the folk of valor and Stow. So they fell on them, and left none whom they knew for a man of mettle, but they slew him, sparing only the proletaries and the refuse of the people. These they drove away, and they returned each to his folk, whilst the king secluded himself with his pleasures, and surrendered his soul to his lusts, working tyranny, oppression, and violence, till he outraced all the men of evil who had forerun him. Now this king's dominion was a mine of gold and silver, hyacinths and jewels, and the neighboring rulers, one and all, envied him his empire, and looked for calamity to betide him. Moreover, one of them, the king of Outer Hind, said to himself, I have gotten my desire of wresting the realm from the hand of yonder silly lad, by reason of that which hath betided of his slaughter of the chiefs of his state, and all the men of valor and mettle that were in his country. This is my occasion to snatch away that which is in his hands, seeing he is young in years, and hath no knowledge of war, nor judgment thereto, nor is there any left to counsel him aright or succour him. Wherefore this very day will I open on him the door of mischief, by writing him a writ, wherein I will flight him, and reproach him with that which he hath done, and see what he will reply. So he indited him a letter to the following effect. In the name of Almighty, the compassionating, the compassionate, and after I have heard tell of that which thou hast done with thy Wazirs and Olema and the men of valiancy, and that whereinto thou hast cast thyself of calamity, so that there is neither power nor strength left in thee to repel whoso shall assail thee, more by token that thou transgressest and orderest thyself tyrannously and prolifically. Now Allah hath assuredly given me the conquering of thee, and the mastery over thee, and into my hand hath delivered thee. Wherefore do thou give ear to my word, and obey the commandment of me, and build me an impregnable castle amiddlemost the sea. And thou cannot do this, depart thy realm, and with thy life go flee. For I will send unto thee from the farthest ends of Hind 12 hordes of horses, each 12,000 fighting men strong, who shall enter thy land, and spoil thy goods, and slay thy men, and carry thy women into captivity. Moreover, I will make my Wazir, Badia, a captain over them, and bid him lay straight siege to thy capital, till the master he be. And I have bidden the bearer of this letter that he tarry with thee but 3 days. So an thou do my command, thou shalt be saved. Else will I send that which I have said unto thee. Then he sealed the scroll, and gave it to a messenger, who journeyed it with it until he came to the capital of Word Khan, and delivered it to him. When the king read it, his strength failed him. His breast waxed straight, and he made sure of destruction, having none to whom he might resort for aid or advice. Presently he rose, and he went to his favorite wife, who, seeing him changed of color, said to him, What mattereth thee, O king? Quoth he, This day I am no king, but slave to the king. And he opened the letter and read it to her, whereupon she fell to weeping and wailing and rending her raiment. Then he asked her, Hast thou aught of rede or resource in this grievous strait? But she answered, Women have no resource in time of war, nor have women any strength or aught of counsel. 'Tis men alone who, in like of this affair, have force and discourse and resource. When the king heard her words, there befell him the utmost regret, and repentance, and remorse for that he had transgressed against his wazirs and officers and lords of his land. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased her permitted say. Now, when it was the 924th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when King Word Khan heard the words of his favorite wife, there befell him the utmost regret and repentance for having transgressed against and slain his wazirs and the chiefs of his state, and he would that he had died ere there came to him the like of these shameful tidings. Then he said to his women, Verily, there hath betided me from you that which befell the Francolin and the Tortoises. Asked they, and what was that? And he answered, Men, tell the tale of the Francolin and the Tortoises. It is said that sundry tortoises dwelt once in a certain island, abounding in trees and fruitiers and rills, and it fortuned one day that Francolin, he passing over the island, was overcome with the fiery heat and fatigue, and being in grievous suffering, stayed his flight therein. Presently, looking about for a cool place, he espied the resort of the tortoises, and alighted down near home. Now, they were then abroad foraging for food, and when they returned from their feeding places to their dwelling, they found Francolin there. His beauty pleased them, and Allah made him lovely in their eyes, so they exclaimed, Subhana Ilya, extolling their Creator, and loved the Francolin with exceeding love, and rejoiced in him, saying one to the other, For sure, this is the goodliest of the birds. And all began to caress him and entreat him with kindness. When he saw that they looked on him with eyes of affection, he inclined to them, and companioned with them, and took up his abode with them, flying away in the morning, whither he would, and returning in eventide, to pass the night by side of them. On this wise he continued a long while, until the tortoises, seeing that his daily absence from them desolated them, and finding they never saw him save by night, for at dawn he still took flight in haste, and they knew not what came of him, for all that their love grew to him. They said to each other, Indeed, we love this Francolin, and he is become our true friend, and we cannot bear parting from him. So how shall we devise some device tending to make him abide with us always? For he flieth away at dawn, and is absent from us all day, and we see him save at night. Quoth one of them, Be easy on my sisters. I will bring him not to leave us for the turn of an eye. And quoth the rest, saying, An thou do this, we will all be thy thralls. So when the Francolin came back from his feeding place, and sat down amongst them, that wily tortoise drew near unto him, and calling down blessings on him, giving him joy of his safe return, and saying, O my lord, know that Allah hath vouchsafed thee our love, and hath in like manner set in thy hearts the love of us, whereby thou art become to us a familiar friend, and a comrade in this desert. Now the goodliest of times for those who love one another is that they are united, and the source of calamities for them are absence and severance. But thou departest from us at peep of day, and returnest not to us till sundown, wherefore thou betideth us extreme desolation. Indeed, this is exceedingly grievous to us, and we abide in sore longing for such reason. The Francolin replied, Indeed, I love you also, and yearn for you, yet more than you can yearn for me. Nor is it easy for me to leave you, but my hand hath no help for this, seeing that I am a fowl with wings, and may not wand with you always, because that it is not of my nature. For a bird, being a winged creature, may not remain still, save it be for the sake of sleep o' nights. But as soon as it is day, he flieth away, and seeketh his morning meal in that place soever pleaseth him. Answered the tortoise, Sooth thou speakest. Nevertheless, he who hath wings hath no repose at most seasons, for that the good he getteth is not a fourth part of what ill betideth him. And the hindmost aims of the creature are repose and ease of life. Now Allah hath bred between us and thee love and fellowship, and we fear for thee, lest some of thine enemies catch thee, and thou perish, and we are denied the sight of thy countenance. Rejoined the Francolin, True. But what rede hast thou or resource for my case? Quoth the tortoise, My advice is that thou pluck out thy wing feathers, wherewith thou speedest thy flight, and tarry with us in tranquillity, eating of our meat, and drinking of our drink in this pasturage, that aboundeth in trees rife with fruits, yellow ripe, and we will sojourn, we and thou, in this fruitful stead, and enjoy the company of one another. The Francolin inclined to her speech, seeking ease for himself, and plucked out his wing feathers, one by one, in accordance with the rede approved of by the tortoise. Then he took up his abode with them, and contented himself with the little ease and transient pleasure he enjoyed. Presently up came a weasel, and glancing at the Francolin, saw that his wings were plucked, so that he could not fly. whereat he rejoiced with joy exceeding, and said to himself, Verily yon Francolin is fat of flesh, and scant of feather. So he went up to him and seized him, whereupon the Francolin called out to the tortoises for help. But when they saw the weasel hind him, they drew apart from him, and huddled together, choked with weeping for him, for they witnessed how the beast tortured him. Pranked the Francolin, Is there aught with you but weeping? And quoth they, O our brother, we have neither force nor resource, nor any course against a weasel. At this the Francolin was grieved, and cutting off all his hopes of life, said to them, The fault is not yours, but mine own fault, in that I hearkened to you, and plucked out my wing feathers wherewith I used to fly. Indeed, I deserve destruction for having obeyed you, and I blame you not in aught. On like wise, continued the king, I do not blame you, O women, but I blame and reproach myself, for I remembered not that ye were the cause of the transgression of our father Adam, by reason whereof he was cast out of the Garden of Eden. And for that I forgot ye are the root of all evil, and hearkened to you, in mine ignorance, lack of sense, and weakness of judgment, and slew my Wazirs and the governors of my state, who were my loyal advisers in all mine actions, and in my glory and my strength against whatsoever troubled me. But at this time find I not one to replace them, nor I see any who shall stand me in their stead, and I fall into utter perdition. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale for today, till it be morrow.